Hey guys, I hope you're having a good day. This video is urgent given the time factor of the next move I anticipate for Bitcoin. And in our last video, we analyzed the previous two reversals that have occurred this cycle and how it seems to be playing out once again right now. The core analysis was that in the rally, we left gaps that perfectly were filled, as you can see here and here, which was followed by a wedge reversal pattern and then sent the market rip-roaring higher for the weeks to come. And that's where we find ourselves right now. So I wanted to create a more digestible video. So in this video, what I want to summarize is that the reversal we are having right now in Bitcoin is almost identical to this one and this one that has already played out 2 times this cycle. And I'm going to show you why right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate these patterns and then overlay them and then set them to the same time frame. Now I've also set these lines to identify the similar dips into where we finally reversed out on every scenario here. The first dip identifies the first dip into the gap on this retracement. Second one is the full fill of the gap. And the third one is the final shakeout before we entered this rally. Now, one of the first things that I really want to show you is that very similar in all 3 scenarios, on the relief bounce off of the first dip and followed down, you can find that this retracement before the rally, just like in every scenario here, and the one that we're playing out right now, was where it found support before it jumped back into this trend and then followed up by a massive breakout for the weeks to follow. I'm going to remove these circles for the meantime in order to identify the wedge that we also showed in every scenario in the previous video, which is ultimately the pattern that it falls out of in this last retracement. And one thing I want to point out here is when we dropped into that gap for the first time and we had a relief bounce, we recovered above this wedge in every instance prior. And then we aggressively dropped back into it here, here, and here. And then we started forming these wedges on the way up. And that's what I'm identifying right now is very similar to the previous 2 scenarios. We dropped below that wedge formation briefly before bouncing right back into it and ultimately taking off. And I think what's going to happen, guys, is we're going to recover very similar to these 2 back into this wedge up here. And in the following days, it'll spend maybe a few days into here, but we'll eventually start breaking out. And we're going to go up to those targets of 150,000 within a matter of weeks to 2 months at the max is what I would say. And the reason I believe that within the coming days to get back into this wedge is that the market loves certainty. The market is going to have so much more certainty after the tariff days tomorrow is done and Trump announces what he announces. And I don't think, unless something catastrophic happens, which is not going to be in his best interest as the president of the United States, we're going to have a lot more certainty and people are going to have an idea and clarity as to what to expect in the market, and people will start making decisions based off of that. Very similar to back here, you could argue that certainty played a big factor in this rally. You know, we had the polls and who was going to win or not. But right when Trump finally got voted in on voting day, everything just started rallying up because we had certainty as to what the future held. And one last thing on a timing perspective, I think we're actually this is more similar of a pattern to the first one, not this reversal, but this one back here, just on the structure of how aggressive this dip was, and this was too. And the structure just seems to be a little bit more familiar. And when we did bounce back into this, we had a daily RSI, stochastic RSI, crossing over to bounce back into that trend and eventually just start ripping higher. And in our current scenario, we additionally have that same stochastic RSI crossover. So I think that will support us into tomorrow as well. I really do think this is make or break for Bitcoin, guys. Depending on how things go tomorrow, anything can happen. But I think we're either going to break weekly cycle lows here and fall much lower for a significant period of time, or follow this exact pattern, which is what side I am on currently. And if we start breaking those lows, yeah, I'll be forced to de-risk some of my positions. However, I am very optimistic that this pattern will play out and we'll start jumping back into this wedge and continuing up for weeks to come. I just wanted to get my point across with that last video being a bit lengthy and summarize it in a shorter video here. So I hope you appreciate that. And that's all I got for you guys today. So if you liked the video and want to stay tuned in, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, cheers.